Well, in the continuing saga of seeing if we can get rid of the vapor lock, I've never tested this yet to see if the fuel pressure regulator, which I just installed here, will solve the vapor lock problem. I don't think it will, though, to tell you the truth. But there's an old Racer's Trek wooden clothespins. You see the fuel line down there coming out of the fuel pump? Put a bunch of wooden clothespins on there, and it's actually wooden clothespins that you use as a heat sink versus metal ones, which seems almost counterintuitive because you think a wooden clothespin is an insulator, but that's what they used back in the the old flathead Ford V8s. They had a lot of problems with fuel percolating. Even with the old style gas, it wasn't just a problem with the ethanol which we have today, which has a much lower boiling point, so any amount of heat can pretty much cause you to get vapor lock. But that was also why the hoods used to have the styling with the louvers on them. It was actually a functional thing to allow the heat to escape. Now, if I pop the hood on this thing on a hot day and I shut the engine down and I let it sit from, that the time is usually from 10 to 12 minutes to about 50 minutes to an hour, like say 12 minutes to 50 minutes, it's very hard to start. It gets vapor lock, and you can see fuel bubbling up in the gas filter. If you let it cool down about an hour, it starts up. Or usually you can get it started, then it stalls. It's a classic fake vapor lock symptom. In other words, it's got air in the lines from bubbling up fuel. And in my case, I think the real problem is the mechanical fuel pump being bolted to the block is mainly where the problem is. I did insulate the line that runs behind this alternator with some heater hoses, the length of heater hose. It was before, it was kind of like touching the block and the water pump, but no longer. And I also insulated this fuel line from the heater hose here with an extra piece of rubber. But most of the heat is actually coming from that fuel pump. Now, probably what could be done, if they made a phenolic resin spacer, even if it was an 1/8 inch wide, for that fuel pump, I think that would greatly help the problem. And I heard they used to do that. I don't know if nobody makes one now. I guess you could make one yourself. That changes the length that the plunger goes, the plunger rod. But then again, you can always change the length of the plunger rod, and you still get some heat from transfer from the bolts itself. But most of it would be solved. The other thing you could probably do with that fuel pump is put a heat sink on it, sort of like a computer, like a computer processor. Just, I don't know, maybe you can put a heat sink on there with some aluminum fans. Now, I do have my spacer. This is a phenolic resin spacer for that carburetor, which is the Holley 2-barrel or Barry Grant Demon 2-barrel. I'm not going to put this on right now. I'm curious to see if this will help it greatly. The thing is, it's not that super hot today. So, that's another thing. It's another issue that, did I solve it or not? But I'm a little curious to see if the old clothespin works. Clothespin trick works. And from what I've been reading, it does work quite a bit of times, believe it or not. Some people said that it worked 100% for them. Some people said it didn't work. I don't know why that is, because I would think that the wooden clothespin is, I don't care what it looks like, man. Okay, I'll paint it blue, all right? I'll paint it hot rod black or some shit if it works, or whatever, or paint it silver. But, the wooden clothespin is an insulator, so I'm thinking, how could that be a very good conductor of heat away from the hot line? I don't know. Maybe it is. Very difficult to say, man. I don't know. Maybe it still works though. But they didn't use metal clothespins; it was wooden ones, and that's been, that was used popularly on the old Ford flathead V8s because they had problems with the fuel percolating even back, when the gas was good back in the 1940s and 50s when they're running around with them flathead V8s and their 32 and 34 Fords. Yeah, I gotta get one of those. Man, I wish those things were cheap, man, because I freaking I tell you the truth, I'd rather have one of those cars than even a 50s or 60s cars. Talk about simplicity, I think simpler than that is a Jeep that's maybe two-wheel drive Jeep. But anyway, we'll see how this works out. Alright, get this thing warmed up a little bit, riding down the road. Well, let's see if the clothespin trick works. If it doesn't work for me, it might work for you, because it does work quite a few times. Okay, it started slow, but it didn't stall. You know, I guess the other part is to put the thermal spacer, but that must have made a difference. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to shut this thing off, and I'm going to wait about 15 minutes, open the hood, and look at the clear glass, the sight glass in the fuel filter, and see if it's got bubbles in it. If it's got no bubbles in it, you see what I mean? I'm going to, the hood's going to stay shut. We're going to shut this thing off right now and give it about 15 minutes or so. Get the heat build up and see if there's bubbles in the glass. Now, I should change the plugs on this damn thing too. I did have diesel fuel I put in here too. There's another thing. So, start a little slow, but hey, it's not like I have to restart it. So it looks like it's working. Okay, so it's about 22 minutes since I shut the engine off. See if there's fuel. It's not an extremely hot day today, but it's hot enough that it should be giving me a boiling problem. Look at that. No boiling fuel. How's that? So these clothespins do work. There's a lot of them down there, and they're right down where the fuel pump is. So it does work. Maybe it's not, maybe it won't work if it's 100 degrees out, but it is hot. It got hot today. I didn't do it yesterday because it was a little cooler. It's a little cool today, but not, that should have been boiling up. And I think maybe if I put the spacer on there, what's that over here? Right here, right there. If I put that spacer in there, it might start up better. I think, obviously, see, when there's vapor lock, it might be taking a while to start, but then when it starts up, and even if I had it revving up like 2,500 RPM, you're thinking, oh, I got it started. Then it would, it might be running for maybe 30 seconds. You're thinking, oh, it's going. Then it stalls, even at the higher RPM. You're putting some gas on, the pedal, right? That's classic vapor lock because it used up the fuel in the bowl, and then, here's some freaking stuff coming in here. So maybe I didn't get it all, but it seemed to help it. Here's some. It seemed to help it. Well, we'll see, but I spoke too soon. It seemed to help it though. So, I'm leaving those clothespins on here. And that might be a worthwhile trick to use. It might not work 100%, but I usually had to start this thing. It's gotten a little bit better. It's gotten a little bit better from just shielding the fuel line with the heater hose. And it seems to be a little bit better yet with the clothespins. So it's still got some of this boiling the fuel right here. Well, for a second I thought I had it licked. Well, spoke too soon. So, But, you know, before I insulated the line at all, there was no insulation on the fuel line. If the hood was closed and the thing sat from like 12 minutes to say 50 minutes, like between, I don't know, good 10 minutes, had to be off, maybe a little longer, to maybe up to an hour, okay? Then I'd have to get starting fluid. And it's been like this actually since I had the car, pretty much. It's always been like that. So, you know, if I crack the hood on it or something, or if I let it sit an hour, I have no problem starting it up, you know? So, it's always been like this. But you know what? Hey, look at that, see? Okay, the bubbling stopped. So, I mean, you know, it is better. It has helped it. Then, when I insulated the line with the heater hose to get it away from the block, the engine block, and the water pump, you know, it would start up and run, you know, take a lot of cranking. It would start up, and then it would stall. But at least it would start up, and, you know, wouldn't have to get out the starting fluid. Then it would stall, then have to restart it, maybe 3 times. But I didn't have to get out the starting fluid, so there was an improvement. This time, I did have to crank it a bunch of times, but when it finally started, and that's with the clothespins and the other part of the fuel line, you know, insulated from the block and the, you know, the water pump. So this time I started, it took a lot of cranking, but when it started, it stayed started. So, you know, that's pretty good, I actually, tell you the truth. I think that's not too bad. I mean, I can live with that. The problem absolutely probably is the fuel pump itself. But, you know, if I get it where, you know, I put a thermal spacer on it and it starts up and pretty easy, even though the fuel pump's got the fuel getting kind of hot. Right now it's actually enough where I don't like it taking that long to crank over, but maybe if I cut that down in half, you know, maybe I gotta crank it for about 7 seconds and it starts up. It's okay, I don't care. So, all in all, that clothespin trick does definitely help. It does help. So, I was kind of, you know, I just had to try it out. So, there you go. You know, if it helps you, fine. But, you know, it's not that well known. It's not that well known. I think it's known on some of the hot rodder forums, but I don't think too many people talked about it on YouTube. I don't know what the hell they put on YouTube, to tell you the truth. I don't really look. But this seemed to help a little bit. Okay, so I had the hood open for about 4 minutes or something, right? That's what happens here. That's not too bad. That's a hell of a lot better than it was. Those clothespins, although not a perfect solution, they definitely do help. That's weird, man. So I got like 50 clothespins for like $1.50 from General Dollar Store. So you might want to try that crap. That is amazing. Holy smokes. Yeah, we'll see. When we get that thermal spacer on there, and you know, I changed the spark plugs out, I don't think I'm going to even have a problem. Now it popped out of the carburetor when I started just now because this is a manual choke. You know, I mean, I should have probably pumped the gas a little more or whatever the hell it is. Didn't have enough gas in here, but hey, it started up okay.